To all those who devoted their lives to aviation. The Wings of Russia studio presents. Wings of Russia documentary. The most hard was the war with Finland. The Red Army generals planned to cope with it within 3 weeks, but the war continued for 4 winter months. Due to mediocre leadership, entire combat units were surrounded and there was no other way but to support them by air. Flights were performed under heavy conditions in snow, frost and fog. The shipment volume turned out to be unexpectedly huge. Aircraft from almost all military districts and even from the civil air fleet had to be employed. The passenger PS-84 helped a lot to resolve the problem. Its production was started in the USSR just before the war with Finland, under a license of the American Douglas Company. This aircraft had an advanced for its time radio and electronic equipment, blind flight tools, automatic pilot control, and means for defrosting. Of all Soviet aircraft of that time, PS-84 was the most suitable for troops and cargo's transportation. It could take 21 paratrooper and up to 2 tons of cargo on board. Almost 5,000 of these aircraft were manufactured. Since September 1942, it was renamed into Lee-2 after Boris Lisunov, the chief engineer of the plant at which this aircraft was made. The Soviet Union entered the Great Patriotic War having no time to build its efficient transport aviation. In the meantime, the war was turning global and demanded relevant volume of air shipments, but they were nothing to be performed on. The scanty transport aviation fleet suffered notable losses from the first German bombings. Once again, frontline aviation and the civil air fleet were used, of which special purpose air groups were formed. Everything that could fly was employed. Those were hard times for the transportation staff, military units relocation, evacuation of the wounded, deliveries of ammunition and food to the front. But with all this daily intensive work, the main task, assault troops landing, was never forgotten. The first in the war troops landing was made on June 29, 1941. 300 German tanks ran out of gas near the town of Slutsk. An assault team of 64 paratroopers was sent to destroy them. In October, near Mtsensk, an assault group stopped Guderian tanks moving towards Moscow for over 2 weeks. In January 1942, near Vyazma, 7,000 paratroopers were landed throughout 11 nights. They fought in the enemy's rear for 4 months, and all this time transport aircraft were bringing them support. Supply of the surrounded Leningrad occupies a special page in the history of transport aviation. In order to increase Lee-2 load capacity, the aircraft was stripped from all seats and even upholstery. Aircraft were bringing food and medicine to the surrounded city, taking people out on their way back. The route went over Ladoga Lake. In order not to be detected, aircraft flew right over the water edge. Partisan activities brought a new transportation task: supply to partisan units. Flights were mostly performed at night, with landing on badly lightened grounds of limited sight. 10 p.m. Right on time. Fly away. Junkers are in the air. Take out the boxes. Lieutenant, help. That's all. Bring the wounded. You have 2 minutes. 21, 22, 23. That's all. No more space, guys. Take all, quick. Quick, quick. Ivan Kuzmich, huge overload. 40 people. We can take only 23. It won't take off. So what? Are we out on a walk? I won't leave them here. I'll make it. During the war, a minor amount of such light transportation aircraft as Yak-6, She-2, captured Junkers Ju-52 and Zibel 204 were used. However, the majority of shipments were performed on Lee-2. From 1943, the transportation fleet was replenished with the Douglas C-47 brought by Lend-Lease. Like Lee-2, it was based on the passenger DC-3. C-47 main difference from its Russian analog was in the large cargo door, which allowed to load even Willis-type vehicles. The American aircraft was deemed more reliable, and it was sent to perform the most serious tasks. Successful construction became the key to the Lee-2 and C-47 long life. Moreover, the first Sergei Ilyushin's aircraft resembled Douglas a lot. Upon the end of the military activities in Europe, transportation aviation continued experiencing hard times. It took part in moving out numerous trophies from Germany. Besides, Soviet military units were being transported to the Far East, where they were concentrated to fight Japan. The military advance started in August 1945. Japanese defense was weak, and Soviet tanks broke away from their supply bases for hundreds of kilometers, so that fuel and ammunition had to be delivered by aircraft. The Second World War experience showed how significant transport aviation was in combat conditions. 1/3 of all air flights during the war were made in performance of transportation purposes. A conclusion was to be made. Transport aviation should be established as a separate structure equipped with special aircraft. The United States followed exactly this way. They created aircraft of different carrying capacity and range, first with piston engines and then with gas turbine engines. Such variety responded to the American military doctrine, according to which military transport aviation as means of supply was given one of the highest priorities. In the second half of the 50s, the U.S. military transport aviation was equipped with the C-130 Hercules turboprop aircraft, which became a workhorse not only for the U.S. Army but for the armies of many other countries of the world. The Soviet Union, which was spending enormous money for the restoration of its economy, just as before, aircraft of different types were being modified for the transportation purposes. Push it up. In 1948, the landing transport aviation was equipped with Il-12D. This aircraft was not much faster than Lee-2, but had one undoubted advantage, a cargo hatch on the left side. Review of the wartime assault operations, especially those in Normandy, where an enormous number of assault gliders were used, influenced the creation of similar machines in the USSR. That's how C-25 glider designed by Pavel Tsibin and Yak-14 glider of Alexander Yakovlev appeared. While the first of them could take around 2 tons of cargo on board, the payload of the other was twice as much.